everyone, my name is Patrick McDonald. Welcome to my presentation on brewery taxes, how to save money and not overpay. I am the owner of Beer Accountant, and over the next half an hour I will hopefully provide you some information, my best practices, some tips, some tricks on how to complete your brewery taxes. If I go too fast, you don't understand something, it's a little foreign to you, that's okay. Please visit my website, beeraccountant.com, for all the resources that you're going to see here today. A little bit about me. I'm a CPA. I've been in the accounting industry for over 10 years. The different types of companies that I worked for have been for-profit, non-profit, governmental entities, startups, Fortune 100 companies, as well as publicly traded companies. I've either been an auditor for them or a lead financial analyst. You name a business, you name an industry, I've either audited their financial statements or presented their financial report in front of their C-level executive board members. A few years ago, I was approached by a small business, family owned. They asked if I could help them. I started helping them. I started to love it. I was like, wow, I'm really making an impact. They're seeing my services as a great help to them. I'm saving them not only money, I'm saving them time, and I'm saving them peace of mind. This is where I really hit my stride, and I established a relationship with one brewery. One brewery quickly led to 7 breweries. Now I stand here in front of you today making a video, looking at my laptop and my phone at the same time, putting on a presentation for the Brewers of Pennsylvania Symposium. I hope you find this informative. I hope I'm able to keep your attention. We're going to be talking about taxes, not the most exciting thing in the world. I love them, but not everybody else shares that sentiment. And I hope in the next half an hour we get to develop a little bit of a rapport. You get some nuggets out of this, and I get to better explain what I do for breweries. Thank you, and let's start saving you some money. What are we going to talk about today? There's just a few things that I want to hit on that I think are very important that we're going to talk about. First one, saving you money on a sales tax exemption. I'm going to go into a little more detail, but you shouldn't have to pay sales tax on big purchases that you use for manufacturing your beer. Then there's going to be 3 main taxes that we're going to talk about. First one being the federal 3.7% tax, also known as the Federal Excise Tax. That is implemented by the TTB. We'll have a section on that, how to fill out the form, when it's due, how much it is, what they charge per barrel, everything like that. The next tax is the Pennsylvania Malt Beverage Tax, also known as penny a pint tax. When's it due? What form you need to fill out? How do you fill it out? How much is it? Stuff like that. The last tax, which is the tax that most recently changed, is the sales and use tax. The Brewers Association had a big change in this tax in October of 2019. From what I've experienced, not everyone's accounting for that correctly and charging the right tax for that. So we'll go over that. I'll have a summary of all 3 taxes. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Beer Accountant can do for your brewery, not only on the financial side, but on the personal side as well for your taxes. So that's the agenda we're going to cover in today's presentation, and let's get to it. Okay, let's start by saving you guys some money. Everybody here that's listening to this owns a brewery, and a brewery actually manufactures a good for Pennsylvania, for fellow Pennsylvanians to consume, which means you are in the manufacturing business. So this is a practice everybody should be doing. On average, this can save you about $1,000 a year. I am talking about the Pennsylvania sales tax exemption. That's correct. You should be saving about $1,000 a year on certain purchases. Major purchases that help you in the manufacturing of your good, which is beer. We're going to take a look at the Pennsylvania exemption certificate. This is form Rev 1220, REV-1220. Again, you can refer to beeraccountant.com if you need this form. What I would recommend is to take this form, print out 50 of them. Keep them in your office or on your bar top. We're going to go over how to fill this out right now. Before we get to the actual form, I want to just reiterate, everybody that has a license for a brewery, they have a license to manufacture a good made in Pennsylvania for consumers in Pennsylvania. That is why you're able to use this form. I'm going to read the law verbatim. The law reads, manufacturers are exempt on purchases of property that will be incorporated into the product and materials and supplies predominantly and directly used to produce the product. These items must have a direct causal relationship to the manufacturing process. Pre-production, post-production, administrative items, they are not exempt under the manufacturing exemption. So again, predominantly and directly used to produce the product. You're going to ask, what does that mean? What type of things can we not have to pay, sales and local taxes on? Examples of equipment that you should not have to pay local sales, state sales, and use tax on are canning machines, tanks, milling machines, label machines, any major purchase that you use to directly manufacture your beer. Should not have to pay any local, state, or use tax on. And it's a very easy one-page form, Rev 1220. We're going to go over this right now. I recommend printing a stack of these. We're going to keep some of it blank until we know what vendors we're going to use, and then the rest of it you can start filling out. Starting at the top, right on the top header, state and local sales and use tax. We're going to check that. That first bubble is the one that you are going to be checking on all of these. Further down, the first question is you're going to check one if you're using this vendor as a one-time purchase or you're using this vendor as multiple purchases, multiple transactions. Depending on the vendor, if you're going to keep going back to them, they can have this on their file for multiple purchases. If it's a one-off, check the top one. The next section is about the vendor and the seller themselves. We're going to keep that blank. We don't know who we're buying the production equipment from just yet. We're going to go down about halfway to the page. There's numbers 1 through 8. We are only concerned with number 1. You only have to have one of these exemptions to use this certificate. And your license as a brewery, you get to use number 1. It says property or services that will be used directly and predominantly by purchaser in performing purchases, operations of manufacturing. That's all you're going to put in this line right here is manufacturing. And then you can ignore 2 through 8. Manufacturing. You're manufacturing goods for Pennsylvania. Done. Further down, name of purchaser or leasee, that's you. You're going to put the name of the brewery, name of the owner, the signature, the EIN. The date I would keep blank for now. Your address, your city, state, zip code, those aren't going to change. Fill that out. So on this form, I'd have the top checked. Leave the check 1 blank for now. You don't know which vendor you're going to use. Leave the vendor information blank. Number 1, put manufacturing in the line. All the way down to the bottom. Fill all that out except for the date. Print a stack of them. Have them ready to go. Give these to your vendors whenever you're making major purchases for production and manufacturing of your goods. I already listed off what you can use them for. Again, have a stack of these. The production costs of making beer are your biggest cost. You should not have to pay any sales, local, or use tax on them. If any of your vendors have a problem, tell them to give me a call. I've talked to vendors directly of how they need to interpret this certificate. And this beer right here, let's think that this is right behind your brewery. Coming out, slinging it over the counter for a customer. This beer right here, shout out to Thor, nice cloudy IPA. How much money in taxes is this beer? Multiple choice question. I'm going to give you some answers. SAT style. A, 2%. B, 10 cents. C, the sales tax plus 25% of the total sale. D, 3%. Give you some time to think about it. I really want to drink this, but I'm not going to. Try to be a professional here. And time's up. Unfortunately, the answer is E, none of the above. There's a lot more factors that go into figuring out how much taxes on one kind of beer. It varies depending on the brewery, their production, and their location. There's also some other factors. Did you make that beer yourself, or is it a guest tap? Do you operate in Philadelphia or Allegheny County or a different county? What was the retail sales price that you charged on this beer? All of these are factors into figuring out how much money you owe on this beer. I'm going to go over the three main taxes you have to pay on the beer, starting with the Federal Excise Tax, the Malt Beverage Tax, and the Sales and Use Tax. So we're going to start with the Federal Excise Tax. I'm going to dive more into detail right now. First up is the Federal Excise Tax. This is a tax imposed by the TTB. TTB, the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. This tax is $3.50 for every barrel of beer that you produced, not sold, produced. So even the beer that you're dumping, or it's not good enough to sell, or the losses that you suffered, even though you produced that beer, you're still getting taxed on that. The standard rate for a barrel of beer, according to the TTB, is 31 US gallons. So that's what they're using for one barrel of beer. As long as you produce 60,000 barrels or less, it is $3.50 per barrel of beer that you produce. If you're making over 60,000 barrels of beer a year, up to 2 million barrels of beer, it's going to be $16 for every barrel over that original 60,000 barrels. So 60,000 barrels or less, $3.50 a barrel of beer. 60,001 up to 2 million, those barrels are taxed at $16 a barrel. I don't know anybody watching this that's making over 2 million barrels of beer a year, and if you are, I think it's $18.50. Come back and check with me on that. But the biggest takeaway here is beer produced, not beer sold. When are these taxes due? Another little bit of math that you have to do. Depending on how much you plan to pay in federal excise tax is how you figure out when these taxes are due. If you are going to pay $1,000 or more in federal excise tax this year, your taxes are due on a quarterly basis. If you're going to pay $1,000 or less in federal excise tax, your taxes are due on an annual basis. You take $1,000, divide that by $3.50, that is 285 barrels. So I'll simplify it for you. If you're making 285 barrels or more, you owe the federal excise tax on a quarterly basis. And that return is due the 14th day after the quarter year end. Quarter year end being March 30th, June 30th, September 30th, December 31st. So April 14th, July 14th, October 14th, January 14th, your federal excise taxes are due if you're making over 285 barrels a year. Under 285 barrels a year, they're due annually, and I can go over that report real quick with you. It's a one-page report, federal excise tax, form number 1513, excise tax return, Department of the Treasury. A lot of this you're going to keep blank. The top part's a lot of information, serial number, how you're going to pay, the period that you're paying, the EIN, registration number, name and address of the brewery, and then all we care about is line 11 beer. We're not worried about distillery, wine, cigarettes, anything like that. Line 11, the amount of beer, barrelage that you have, we're going to multiply that by 350, that's the tax you owe. This is very straightforward. Now, unfortunately, the TTB can't make it that easy. They put a requirement in for all breweries to file a mandatory quarterly brewer's report. No matter how much beer you produce, no matter your threshold, you have to make a quarterly brewer's report, which gets a little bit messy. And that is this form right here, form 5130.26. This can be found on my website. No matter how much beer you produce, you need to fill this form out on a quarterly basis. This is due 14 days after the quarter is over. I'm going to walk you through this one because this affects all the breweries. Starts off with an EIN, TTB number, a cell phone or an office phone of where the brewery can be reached at, name of the brewery, location of the brewery, what quarter you're filing for. This is an information return called the Quarterly Brewers Report of Operations. This is to keep track of all your inventory, what you're making, what you're selling, what you had to dispose of, what got stolen, what got returned. That's how the process works. Number one, box number one, amount of beer on hand beginning of the quarter. This is going to be the previous quarter's ending inventory. That number is going to match. If it's your first time filling this out, or you're a new brewery you just started, this is going to be 0 because you don't have anything to start with. Next line, number 2, amount of beer you produced. How much beer did you produce in there? Again, this is in barrelage. Any beer received in bond, that's a previous misstatement from the previous quarter. It shouldn't really affect you. Any beer returned to the brewery, hopefully you don't have any beer returned. Physical inventory overage, if you had to make an adjustment from the previous year. Goes down to number 8, total additions to inventory plus the beer on hand. That's a solid number right there. Other side of the form, line number 10, beer removed for consumption. That's beer that you sold. Beer removed without payment, beer that you donated. Beer consumed on premise. Most of the brewery licenses, even though the brewery and where you're consuming is in the same spot, it's going to go in line 10 instead of line 12 for Pennsylvania breweries. Beer destroyed on premise, any losses, any physical inventory disclosed from a shortage of the previous one. And then you get to line 17, total amount of beer on hand at the end of the quarter, and then total beer is number 19. Number 17, for whatever quarter you're filling this out, is when the next quarter happens, is going to be line number 1 for the next quarter. Part 2 and Part 3 you can ignore. Cereal beverage, not applicable. Remarks not applicable. Signature, title, date on the bottom of this. Now, the one good thing the TTB did was make it very easy to file these forms. My recommendation, open a pay.gov account. I'm going to repeat that again. Pay.gov account. It's a little bit of a pain to open up, but once you're in there for the business, you can file these returns electronically with a timestamp for free. You can pay this return for free with a timestamp. They do a little bit of verification to get your original login set up. After that, it's very easy. They send you reminders, hey, quarterly Brewers report due, quarterly Brewers report due. Pay.gov, I cannot stress that enough. Your one stop for the Federal Excise Tax to pay your taxes and to file your taxes, and also follow your quarterly Brewers report, which is mandatory for all of you. Moving on to the second tax we want to talk about, it's called the malt beverage tax. Tax implemented by the state of Pennsylvania. Not going to lie, this one is a little tricky, a little time consuming to try and figure out. It is also known as the penny a pint tax. So, it's a tax that's due on a monthly basis along with a report the 15th day after the month is closed. You can go to my website for the forms you need to complete. There's also a list of the schedule when each of these forms is due. Again, monthly to the Department of Revenue of Pennsylvania. It's 1 penny per pint of beer sold. I'm going to walk you through the different forms right now. We're going to start off with the first form. It's called Rev 1052. Pennsylvania manufacturer, bonded importer and shipper's report of taxable malt beverages sold. It is a mouthful. This first page is 1052. If you look at it, you break it down, they want to know how much beer of what volume you sold, and then they're going to tax you accordingly. Now, if you do the math and you run it down, they're taxing you the same amount for a 16 ounce as a 32 ounce, as a 64 ounce, as a quarter keg, as a half keg, as a sixtel. It's the same amount no matter how much beer. Essentially, it's 1 penny per pint. My recommendation, instead of breaking it down like this, I'm going to convert all the sales that you made into barrels. This way here, it's nice and easy. All I care about is line 20. How many barrels did you sell? Each barrel, $2.48. Now that makes sense, right? That makes sense. If you have a half barrel of beer, you have about 124 pints. $1.24 in the tax. Multiply that by 2, $2.48. $2.48 a barrel. That's my recommendation on how to complete this form. I'll start with, at the top, your name and address, federal EIN, the account ID, which is obtained from the Department of Revenue. It's 4 numbers long. Then we're going to an LID number, which is 6 digits long. Then there's the LCB, the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, license number. It usually starts with the letter G, followed by 5 numbers. Again, looking at this form, it's the same rate, the same unit tax rate, depending on how you serve it. I'm going to break everything down into barrels. Simplest way to do that is whatever POS system you have can get your sales by the month in ounces. So total ounces sold, whether crowler, growler, draft, 4-pack. However you're selling your beer, kegs, however you're selling your beer. You get a number of ounces. There's 3,968 ounces in a barrel of beer. Take that number of your total ounces sold in the month, divide that by 3,968. Now you have your barrels. It's not going to come out to an even number, I understand that. I'm going to round it up. It's $2.48 a barrel. If you sold 13.26 barrels, on this form I'm going to say you sold 14 barrels. By the time it takes for us to figure all this out, $2.48, I'll pay that money to keep it moving, for lack of a better term. Sign and date at the bottom. You're halfway done the monthly PA malt beverage. The other form you have to fill out is the Schedule A1. This is an inventory form, just like we talked about in the previous segment with the quarterly Brewers report. This is on a monthly basis for the state of Pennsylvania. Biggest thing here is we want to know how much beer you sold in Pennsylvania and how much beer you sold outside of Pennsylvania. So these numbers on the inventory are going to match the quarterly Brewers report to the TTB. This is on a monthly basis, so you do this 3 times. You take your first month, your third month. That activity is going to go on the quarterly TTB report. So 1052 and 1052A1 go together. You can submit these by mailing them to Harrisburg. You can also submit them online. 2 ways to pay these taxes. They have a telefile system, I think it was invented in 1987, where you can call up a number. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It's free. You got to plug in some information, your bank account information, your LCB information, and then what period you want to pay the taxes for, what the taxes you want to pay for. They give you a 16-digit confirmation number, and that's it. You can pay it by phone. That's great. I like to save some time at a little bit of a fee. Officialpayments.com is a great website. You can pay the Pennsylvania malt beverage tax at officialpayments.com. I'll have that information on my website. Almost out of the woods here, but there's a few additional schedules that you might have to complete depending on your operations. So, first question is, if you sold beer to a distributor or a brew pub in Pennsylvania, you have to complete 1053 Schedule A. And I'll show you what that looks like. Schedule A, they want to know where your beer is going. Again, distributors, bars, brew pubs in the state of Pennsylvania, Schedule A. Same question if you sold beer outside of Pennsylvania to a distributor or a brew pub. Schedule B has to accompany this. And that's 1054-Schedule B. And the last question, if you purchase beer from a manufacturer or a distributor outside the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they want to know the beer that you purchased and from where on Schedule C. So there's up to 5 schedules with this monthly PA malt beverage tax. You definitely have to fill out the first 2, the 1052 and the 1052A1. Depending on your situation, there's a Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C, whether you sold beer in Pennsylvania, sold beer outside of Pennsylvania, purchased beer outside of Pennsylvania. Good news, after all this is said and done, the state hands out a credit for this tax. I know it's only $2.48 a barrel, but the state hands out a credit up to $200,000 per brewery on a first-come, first-served basis. They accept credit applications up through April 1st, 2021, so you will not have to pay this tax. Again, more information on that, revenue.pa/gov/tax credits. They offer up to a $200,000 credit for this PA malt beverage tax, penny a pint, using their website. You can go to my website for more information on how to complete the application for a credit on this tax. Moving on to our last tax we're going to talk about today. The sales and use tax, also known as the E-Tide tax. This sales and use tax was recently updated in October of 2019. They revamped the word use and what they're going to call a use tax. From my experience, what I've seen is not only breweries, but other businesses didn't apply the rules the way that they wanted to be applied according to the law. So I'm going to go over and kind of sort out how they should be applied now under the new bulletin. And what I'm talking about is a tax bulletin for the sales and use, tax bulletin 2019-02. I'm going to be referencing that. We're actually going to be using an example from this. So I have this posted on the website. It's 4 pages. It has 2 great examples that really breaks it down. I highly recommend reading this 4-page tax bulletin on how to account for the sales and use tax of beer, because in the grand scheme of things, they ended up saving you some money. They're not charging the full amount of sales tax for every pint that gets slung across the bar. And we're going to get into it right now. Everything on the sales and use tax is done through E-Tides. Website for E-Tides is etides.state.pa.us. If you don't have access to E-Tides, you have to register with the state of Pennsylvania and do a PA 100. And the website for the PA 100, www.pa100.state.pa.us. All these links are on my website, beeraccountant.com. If you get lost, want to follow along, everything is right there. So, how is my beer taxed? This is the $1 million question we've been talking about throughout this whole video. And they just changed the laws a little over a year ago. Makes it a little bit easier on the breweries as far as they owe less in taxes. A little bit harder on to figure out that exact number that they owe. So for all sales, no matter the product, you have to pay either a sales tax or a use tax. Never both. It's one or the other. The sales tax in the state of Pennsylvania is 6%. Unless you're in Allegheny County, it's 7%. Philadelphia County, 8%. 6% goes to the state, the 2% goes to the county. For Allegheny, 6% goes to the state, 1% goes to the county. The use tax is 25% of that sales tax, so it's much less. Essentially, in an area that's 6% sales tax, 25% of that is 1.5%. So the use tax is 1.5%, and great news, your beer that you manufacture and you sell gets taxed at the use tax rate, not the sales tax rate. I'm going to go into a big detailed example and hopefully cover everything like that. Again, sales and use tax bulletin, 4 pages, read it. I think it does a great job of breaking it down. We're going to do a multiple choice question from that bulletin. Brew company, brewing company. I know it's a little redundant. G license brewery that has the following sales for the month. $2,500 to a distributor, $320 to a restaurant with a liquor license, and $1,000 over-the-counter sales to individual customers who are the ultimate consumer of the beer. Out of that $3,720 in sales, what is the sales and use tax? We're going to break it down. $2,500 to the distributor. No sales tax, because it's from a manufacturer to a distributor within Pennsylvania, keyword being within Pennsylvania. $320 to the bar. You're charging the sales tax on that. You're charging 6%, unless you're in Allegheny or Philadelphia, 7 or 8%. So $320, 6%. The $1,000 to the individuals, the ultimate consumers of the beer, is essentially 1.5%. It's that 6% sales tax, and then the use tax is the quarter of it. And you're paying the use tax on this. Again, you can only pay sales or use tax. You can't pay both. The beer that you manufactured and sold yourself, 1.5% on that. Take the 1,000, multiply it by the 25%, you get $250. Multiply that by the 6% of the sales tax, ends up being $15. So out of $1,000 in beer sales, you owe $15 in use tax. Originally, that law wasn't going to go through. Luckily, it went through. Saves you guys a lot of money on what you owe for use tax of beer. We're going to do another example. Random example. I'll post this. All sales are for the month. One brewery, 300,000 in beer sold. All the beer that's sold for that 30,000 in beer sold. $30,000 in beer sold. All of that was their beer. no guest taps. $2,000 in liquor sales, $1,500 in wine sales, $500 in non-alcoholic drink sales, any sodas, $3,000 in food, $5,000 in merchandise. Total monthly sales, $42,000. They had a great month. Great month. We're going to break this down. All the beer is taxed at 1.5%. It's a use tax. That $30,000 in beer, the use tax on that, 1.5%, $450. The guest wine and the guest liquor, it's not taxed. The brewery themselves already paid the tax on that to have that in their building. So that $3,500 in sales, not taxed for sales or use tax. You already paid that to get that beverage in your building. Non-alcoholic drinks and food, 6% sales tax. $3,500 in sales times 6%, $210. Merchandise, 6% sales tax. $5,000 times the 6%, we're looking at $300. So total sales of $42,000 results in $510 in sales tax, $450 in use tax. So overall, you're paying $960 in sales and use tax for that month. That averages out to be a tax rate of about 2.3%. That first question that I asked you, what's the average tax rate? It's anywhere between 2.2 and 2.4%. Right here, 2.3%. Again, depends on how much beer you produced, and it kind of depends on your spread of what you actually sold, beer to merchandise to food to guest taps to guest liquor, everything like that. Taking those exact numbers, we're going to look at the quarterly sales tax form on eTides. I printed it out right here. This is a 100% virtual form. I just got a picture of it, blew it up, made a copy. But this is something you fill out 100% online. They do give you a 1% credit if you pay this tax early. I recommend paying it early, only a few days early. They'll still give you the 1% tax credit. Saving money. You know, I'm all about saving money. That is the sales and use tax with the updated numbers as of October 2019. Again, read through that bulletin. Any guest taps that you have, you pay the sales fee to that other brewery. So guest tap sales shouldn't be taxed on the use or the sales tax. You've already paid taxes to have that guest tap in your building. Any questions, visit beeraccountant.com. I'm there all the time, and all these resources are there. I'm going to give you a quick 1-minute recap of what we just went over. Sales tax exemption. Get that form, print out 50 of them, complete the bottom, leave the top for the vendor. Shouldn't have to pay sales tax on any major purchases in the manufacturing of your beer. First tax, Federal Excise Tax, either due annually, quarterly, by the TTB. Open up a paid.gov account. You can submit the taxes there, you can submit the payment there. Mandatory quarterly Brewers report, you can fill it out there. Next tax is the malt beverage tax. In PA malt beverage tax, it's a penny a pint, $2.48 per barrel of beer that you produced. Schedule A, Schedule A1, you have to fill out, submit it to the state on a monthly basis. Telefile that, or you can pay them through multiple websites. And the last tax we talked about, sales and use tax, eTides, is 100% online. 1.5% use tax on all the beer that you made, that you sold. Most other things are going to have the 6% sales tax. Any guest liquor, any guest taps shouldn't be taxed. You already paid that money to get it into your building. Now that the presentation is wrapping up, I got all my tax information that I need. Why do I need Beer Accountant? What services are you going to provide me? That's what you're telling yourself. And I understand. Listen, I give you a very quick analysis of just some of the services that I provide. But with me, as a partner with you, I can take your numbers to the next level. Everything that I talked about was reactive. Hey, this is old data. We gotta wait till the month's over, till the day's over, till the week's over to give a report to a certain entity. I'm trying to change the face of accounting and the relationship that you have with your CPA. What if we took those numbers that already happened, put them into some reports, and were proactive about it? Started making forecasts of financials. Hey, every single November you need an extra $5,000 because your workers' comp insurance is due. June, you usually have a very big overflow of cash. September, you usually run out of supplies. All those things are major factors into the brewery business, and that's what I can provide. I can provide additional support to help you make sound financial decisions. Use the data, use the numbers that we have to help you make these pertinent financial decisions. What's your break-even point? How many beers do you need to sell in a month to reach your financial goal? What if I want to retire in 12 years? How much money do I need to make for that? Hey, what if I'm trying to merge? Should I bring on a new partner? We have a 3-barrel system now. What if we got a 6-barrel system? What are you going to do with the old system? You going to sell it? You going to rent it? What about the new system? Should you buy it? Should you rent it? What are the complications with expanding or contracting, selling, bringing on new partners? That's where I come in. That's where Beer Accountant can partner with you, and we can run the variances, the financials on these certain aspects. Not to mention that I've been doing individuals taxes for 15 years. So I have the wherewithal, no matter how you're structured, sole proprietor, LLC, S Corp, C Corp. I've seen all the business taxes, I've done the individual taxes. One of the big things that I can help you with is depreciation. Nobody understands depreciation. Just to start a brewery, you're going to need at least $250, $300, $400, potentially $500,000 to get all that equipment in there, to get started, to get going, to have an inventory before you even open doors and start collecting that first payment from that first beer poured. You're going to have to put out a lot of money and a lot of capital. You don't want to take a hit for $500,000 on your taxes the first year. You'll never crawl out of that hole. You'll never crawl out of that. With depreciation, the ways we can use the taxes, you can make it a much gradual hole to climb out of, and you can make your finances look much more even on a 3, 5, 7-year plan. Along with that, I've helped all my clients receive government funding. Meaning, I don't want to mention this, the elephant in the room, it took me 29 minutes to get here, COVID. COVID-19 destroyed your business, destroyed all restaurants, especially breweries, and I feel you, and there's only so much I can do about that, but what I can do is be in your corner. I've gotten all my clients the PPP loan if they qualified for it, the subsidies, whether it be county or city if they qualified for it, and most of them I've gotten forgiven as well. So I'm there not only for the application process, but for the forgiveness process as well. And I know you're going through a hard time right now. Go to my website, beeraccountant.com. Love to talk to you, can help you out. There's more financing out there right now. We can get you a business loan, a line of credit. It can even be unsecured. I have that ability as well. I want to partner with you to help you achieve your financial goals. You do well, I do well, and I look forward to hearing from most of you. In closing, my tagline is, don't brew that IPA without the CPA. Cheers.